I don't know. I didn't really want to talk about this, but I almost died hiking today, and maybe I just felt like that. Kind of thing where I record, "Hey, I'm alive," and I should put out the that as a thumbnail. As I was trying to get back to my car, I lost my place a little bit. Right. Um, I found a stick, a big thick stick with tiny little pine cones next to it. Didn't place them or anything. They just happened across a genuine dick and balls out in the fucking middle of the woods and nowhere. You know what I mean? It was just like, and there it is. Wow, okay, well, that's a thing. you know? But, so I want to talk about how a free will and truthfully other things here is interpretable in a way, right? And so it's like, I agree with the hallucination thing, right? Like our brains are just trying to keep up to what our observations, constantly analog wise are giving us, right? And so we're never really fully like real time, right? Like we never really see that, which is pretty cool to think about. But anyways, I wanted to talk about instead about how certain people get a procedure for a reduction of their seizures, right? And it's the corpus callosum cut, and then I wanted to talk about how this relates to how octopus arms, so the octopi out there, right? Their arms have an automatic response, kind of like our spinal column, right? Well, our brains are locked in to an analog based system. So, like, they're already preloaded with this potential that works like that. And depending on some of the feeding of various, food, right, to it, it kind of changes a little bit. But in reality, there's just certain connections there and certain potential synaptic ion exchanges, and then there's brain wave frequencies that go along with it. And that's more than good enough for most people to understand basically everything about how our brain kind of works, other than like we have different processing units that are very good for specific tasks, right? And we didn't cut and then rewire the nerve for our body that sends that signal to that area of your brain. And so, like, that side of your body, of course, is still controlled to that other one that's automatically receiving a signal that then automatically responds to stimuli. That's all it did. Yeah. Like, that's it. And it's like, that's not your free will, though. What you got rid of was a doubling of your processing units that you use naturally as a redundancy, effectively. Like, if you think about biology, you want a little redundancy in case brain damage happens. Well, hey, that's going to help, right? So it's like, that's all that is. And then that means it's like, no, our free will is not tied to, well, no, actually, so like a little bit, there's a lot of dumbass kind of levels of debate sometimes that start to head towards like, this group of people that really don't really know much about this. It's like, isn't that cool? You're gonna get all the puss. I'm like, shut up over there. You okay? Like, yeah, like, and then the sun will explode. Yeah, in a few billion years. Go fuck yourself. Who cares? Doesn't really mean much, right? But it's like it's a profound thought. It really gets you existentially a little bit, right? But like they tend to turn it too much into that, which is the thing, right? So it's like I like that, but then it's like if we really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of it, it's a bunch of stimuli from our occipital lobe and other nerve endings going into that area of your brain that then automatically responds because it's going into a default mode state, kind of like a fight or flight to and or essentially the equivalent of you breathing. You know what I mean? Like you have a huge massive brain injury and then your arms do the thing and then you start trying to breathe and then you're just kind of defaulting. Well, yours doesn't know that this is like that right now, and so like that then eventually changes to, oh, it'll just respond to stimuli, even though like the response is a little bit more complex, right? And it's like it's tied into how we sleepwalk and do complicated tasks. That's what that is. It's tied in. Like we know that now these days, And like back in the day, we didn't, but like that's what we know. And so like that's the scary part for a lot of people. It's like, wait, that was like really big, cool stuff. And it's like, no, well, yeah, no, like basically towards the early 2000s to maybe mid 2000s, tens, right? That's what we used to think. But like recently enough, in the last 2 years, I think we started seeing that um, our brain does go through this change, this weird change, as it tries to adhere connections again and do all these other things to try and work again effectively, like we know that it always seems to do. And we even try and form new neurons, so like stem cells. A forever thought was we never produce stem cells in our brain, right? We just differentiate the cells that are already there, and I was part of that, right? Like I was fully on board with that because it's like that makes a lot of sense. I've been told that all my life, but like it's really hard to check that because you can't really check your brain that way to real time see that. So we don't know as easily, and it took a while, right? But it's like, oh, so we will really do that. Isn't that cool? But it's like, oh, then also wait a second. Wait, so like it's like we're sleepwalking, and depending on the nerves and how they connect, and how the information is sent, the signal, right? You can actually have an alien hand syndrome that's effectively just an octopi arm automatically doing something. That's right. It's still not your consciousness, and it might not like the same things, right? Because like, the setup gets changed. It could be like this, you know, sleep, dream thing kind of situation happening, or you could be going like thinking like maybe that's you going over there, like this dissociative identity thing happening over there, but it's like not really, most likely. Unfortunately, it's just automatic responses, like you breathing, and it's kind of morbid in that sense, like a little morbid, It's a little sketch and scary when you think about it, right? It's like that's a person that's attached to me. That's me. That's how I would act. If I had some serious traumatic brain injury or something, and it's just like, But it's like, hey, if I knock out that area of your processing units, it's like all of a sudden you'll change your personality a little bit, won't you? Right? And it's just like, well, it's a part of your personality, right? Because like that's how it feeds information through. So it's a recirculation kind of cascade effect, you know, and like that's really cool. But that also means that if it's disrupted, the resonance, cascade resonance in this situation, changes and it alters itself, and it goes and flows through a different way now, more easily, more readily, and you have to train it to not do that, which is why we go with connections in the brain, right? But in fact, it's a little bit different than that. It's potential, and it's potential less resistive in certain areas, and how it gets connected and how more readily it's willing to travel that way versus another way starts setting up some of your personality traits. And like, that's cool. You're an analog, digital thing. But it's like, hey, if I think more often this way, with this critical or mathematical or this or that, right? It's like then I start having a personality that starts heading that way in an initial start. But it's like what you can do is actually train your brain to start doing that differently. Right? Like you can go, yes, I did that, but then I can perceive it this way, and I can see it this other way, and this other way, and so on, and go, I now see a bigger and different scale. And it takes a long time, and that's what I usually do on a daily basis. But once you get to those scale levels, you don't have to write it down. You don't have to, put it on a computer or a post-it note and Charlie Dace get it around. That you can kind of grasp it a lot more, and just it goes through, and it's intrinsically understood. Right? And like that's the cool part. But it's like, does that call to our free will? And it's like, well, here's another one, right? Here's the more you observe and the more you see influence you, the more you understand how that influences you, the more you can then understand how that is influencing your decision, which in order to get there, you have to do the scale thing first. You can't see what's influencing you without noticing that scale going on, which is its own tricky bit of business, right? Because it's like, no, there's evidence for that. Sure. I'm not going to post it because you should just look and do the work like I do. But despite that, there is evidence for that, all right? And then on top of it, it's like your free will, most of you won't do that. Most of you will not observe a lot of your triggers, a lot of your influences, a lot of your, things going on in your life that obviously send you one direction more likely than another. And that could be your urges to this food that you ate like 2 days ago sometimes, right? Like fast food could absolutely impact you for days on end. We just saw a great study come out for that on the science subreddit, right? And it's like, yeah. Well, then wait a second. Then what's free will? And it's like, well, it depends pretty heavily, doesn't it? Like a dragonfly or a fruit fly here is basically a bioorganic equivalent of an automatic little machine. That's all it is. It just responds to stimuli. But it's like you got a lot more thinking capability. You can recirculate the thought. You can observe. You can observe the, statically fixed information from that observation, and then you can play around with it with different perspectives. You can relate it to yourself and that which could happen later, right? And so you can calculate things for longer and better than other things on average. And really, free will starts to turn into observation, calculation, action. It's just the parts of that become a little bit more nuanced and more complicated often, which is the fun part, which is why I talk about that with my God operating system and so on. But it's like, hey, so you categorize, you specify, you detail, you filter, and you resolve. These are the 5 at all times you're going to do. You'll categorize whatever it is around you. You'll specify what that means and how it relates to things. You'll detail that specificity to meaning these things relating to what you wish to do now or later. You'll filter that to doing these actions proceeding moving forward, and then you'll resolve by doing them. That's why I named that program off of that. It's how we work. So like we're the God, right? Humans are the God. We're already general intelligent. And we're just programming it to look, act, and kind of understand things like us. Like our body has an automatic response to, emotional stimuli. But like there's a very real survival reason for that. And us getting together and having sex means we'll probably proliferate and continue living for longer, right? Like, hey, we're healthier, we got more of us, we'll survive worse issues. The DNA, you think, can't remember things, and then now all of a sudden we're seeing like how much it does kind of get impacted by our environment, and remember that. And that epigenetic information says there was these massively, we almost all died on our planet situations, so we really need to not do this, right? So like, fuck, eat fuck is effectively what a lot of us do, right? But it's like, you know what? If we talk and we communicate, we do that better. We talk and communicate, we get better tools. So there's an arms race for intelligence. And that's a genetic, in every way, evolutionary selective pressure. And so it's like, well, I thought we were talking about free will. I'm like, you are realizing why you have free will. Evolution had a selective genetic pressure for free will, and it has a free will epigenetically to making itself go and remember that and choose to make something smarter. It's a bit more alive than you want to believe. It might take a much longer period of time to get there, but it does. And that's crazy to think about, because it's like, wait, DNA has free will? And it's like, well, yeah, most likely it does. It observes things and it calculates and it uses us as experiments to effectively get there one day, eventually. And we have all the evidence for that one. Just saying. We are literally walking evidence. Talking evidence, existing evidence. So it's like you deny our reality of us being alive, then you say there's no evidence. It's just like, fuck you. I would prefer different evidence that is not that way, that I can see differently, that then I can challenge you on that. And I'm like, yeah, well, suck it up, though. Still what it is. There's only one reason why we would get here like this. It's like this. So there's that. But to be fair, we can move forward from there and go like, all right, so your brains are basically the bee's knees. We are doing it up large. We're trying to match our fucking evolutionary construct of genetics that have been going on for that long. We're trying to boom, you know what I mean? And so like these algorithms that tie in how we connect these things, which it doesn't see that as this, because why would it, right? But it's been doing that forever. You know, divergence, convergence, how that's efficiency, you know, and this allows for a reduction of this, you know, given resistive or more resistive profile. And it's like, wait, that's like your, you know, bacteria, your ground, your myceliums, your, it just goes on and on and on when you start realizing like how that's everywhere. And so it's tied intrinsically to us as a physics construct of quantum and then to classical reality, right? That's like already there. And so we are mimicking with our brains and our bodies and our patterns and how we do things on a macro scale, that which was always there on a very small quantum and tiny little micron scale, you know, at best, right? So there's that. And it's like, all right, so what is free will? What is an observation? Well, an observation is weird because you use Coulomb forces, and that's effectively just a bunch of fields. Which basically is what our eyes do, in a way. It's a biomechanical physics property, but it doesn't change that when the thing does the hit for the cone and rod, it wiggles and jiggles, yes, but it changes field potential energies. And then we get a sent signal to occipital lobe regions, and we have to go through the little back door here of the brain, you know, and get there. It's pretty cool. You know, we got the spine stuff that has the automatic stuff too, right? But it's like, it's kind of crazy to think that you're basically just a bunch of multiple motherboards strapped together with tracers as a bioorganic construct of a person. And so it's like if you were able to get that nerve to connect elsewhere and you're able to get the occipital lobe to go and effectively no longer do it to that one, you know, for this guy over here, you know, you'd be able to probably see that disappear and your argument be rendered useless. Right? Same thing for free will, where it's like, well, if you get rid of more and more of your calculative ability and your observational ability and your ability to store memories and then use them to relate and then plan, well, you'd be less free will, wouldn't you? And that's what we see. People that are diminished in their capacity, cognitively speaking, or more often needing us to help them, and they're a lot less free will, aren't they? Free will isn't just the observation, it's the ability to understand the choice, the ability to know the choice, the ability to see why the choice was a choice you wanted to make. You can relate information yourself, yes, but also that information towards information that you also are getting. Free will doesn't require a lot. Free will is always there. Very, very easily, you just gotta work for it. You gotta observe a little bit, you gotta think a little harder, right? And so the smarter among us tend to be a little bit more free will having. You know? But not always, you know, that's kind of what that is, right? Because, like, the argument of free will is, like, an entirely different concept. You don't understand it. I think that this isn't what this is, and you probably don't even know what free will in the argument is. But I got rid of most of the arguments that you have for that. In fact, I destroyed them in a lot of ways, on top of basically getting rid of this, I can just store this information as this decision I'm going to make in a place that allows for me to think that you can't see it or whatever else, and then make the decision. And then you'll see this in your brain scanning as I already made this decision and I didn't. You see what I mean, right? It's like, no. I already made it, and I didn't just, wait to click on it, because that should be these other areas of our brain that activate, not this one. As they look and do the little face thing, right? But like the fact of the matter is that is the easy way to see that, right? Like, no. You make decisions possibly minutes before you do it, and it's like, yeah, you said it. I do make decisions. I chose that choice. I just didn't do it yet. That's the thing. And I can keep that as a stored thing elsewhere. And she didn't account for that in that study. It's like, no, we only see it for this. And it's like, yeah, no, I know what that is. Because you have no clue what that does. You finally saw what that was and what was going on when you finally took a look while you had them do that. So really, you just discovered other areas of the brain that store information, not that they already made the choice and it was predetermined by something else in their brain controlling the conscious awareness. That problem for you. And then you end up getting into the other problem of we're never in real time, right? And it's like, well, that doesn't change that, like, nothing is really. And you can still be free will for the observations that you can get, even if they are a little slow. It's okay, That's not an argument for free will. It's just a nice little interesting tidbit of information. But also, that's why when something fucks with your brain and its connectivity, it really goes haywire, doesn't it? It's like, wow, that's not synchronized, it's not timed right, and everything is off. It's like I couldn't get the tracers from this motherboard to phase correctly to go to this is the CPU I'm using, right? From all the input of information. Like I'm not using it, it's not phased in, and it's now just, and like, oh, CPU does not like that. No. I had to do something to help that bad boy. And it's going to go pretty haywire, pretty badly, pretty quickly. And so it's like, well, then there's your ticket, isn't it? Your free will and your conscious awareness and your soul and all the rest of the ghost and machine shit that you are is still intrinsically tied to your bioorganic physiological form. You don't get out of it unless effectively you can project that just a little, to the quantum bullshit around us, as I like to think about it a little bit, because it's a soupy, fluidy, matrixy in its own right. And so if you can hook on to it a little bit and then ultimately, start influencing it just right and keep going and propagating a little bit, well, you could theoretically exist as a construct like that. Which is cool, but it's like, so could anything, not just us. Any observation, any connectivity, any transistor, synaptic network, any of that can exist like that and propagate around with their own observations and free will. And if they go towards a sensor and detector, well, it changes it and it can hurt it, couldn't it? Now, to some people that means ghosts, and I'm like, no, these are just different beings, effectively, like they could exist in a different way than us, right? Which is interesting, right? Because it's like, no, I can't measure this. My very observation means I definitely don't fucking get what it is. Like, I influence it to do it. Let alone, like, if that is happening, I want to avoid the shit out of that. There's no fucking way I'll go near that. And the energy that I eat is going to be entirely different than what our energy is, right? Like, we use, atoms put together and all these exchanges of ions and changing of the shape and connections of the atoms that are together as puzzle pieces that, filter out other puzzle pieces, essentially. That's all we are. We just eat puzzle pieces and we filter them out. That's really what we do. But it's like, quantum wave fluctuations, right, are kind of an interesting phenomenon, but this isn't what we have to do, because to others it's like, wait, it's chaotic as fuck, we can't possibly. I'm like, yeah, no, and so does the air, and we would say that about ourselves, huh? Well, no, and we know things exist in the air. You shut up? There you go. You finally got it. You know what I mean? It's like on a layer, much larger scale, universe size here, you can still be working that way, right? And so it's like, shit. So it's much more likely that it's happening, and the panpsychism is a little bit different. It's more tied into actual physics, but panpsychism is not the real full story, as I already released something on TikTok and all that. Basically kind of going after the hundreds of fucking PhDs that want to say it doesn't work. And I'm like, panpsychism has some issues, but yours has even basically similar issues, just in a different way. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, if you merge these two together, you get something better, right? Like, it's like these are observing things. They're storing information just in a way that you can't really grab a hold of very easily. And it seems somewhat random, but it's just because you don't understand how things are moving on a scale like that. Right? And you can absolutely, chaos theory mathematics wise, already know that you can do something, and for enough period of time, if you were able to calculate very well, know what the effect and ultimately the result will be. What if you were just a sentient being that lives that way? Like, I don't think about me moving my hands. I don't think about every little thing at all. I don't need to, and they don't either. Eventually get to the point, maybe, because it's not really maybe, it's a real, like, that's for sure, that. Like, come on. Your life doing that. So why don't you just grow up a little bit and realize you are walking, talking evidence to the contrary of your desire for this to not be. You know what I mean? Like, here it is. Yeah, they can be there 100%. They are. There wouldn't be much sense of the reality around us if they weren't. And however the hell they want to work and do whatever the fuck they're doing, like, who are we to fucking get around and into that? Especially since to us it's almost like they're dimensional, but they're not really. You know what I mean? They're just a third dimensional that just exists in a different energy context and confines of environment that they sense entirely differently, and so on. Like, it's so bad. It's like they're there. There's no way they aren't. It's just a fact. Statistically, it's impossible for them to not be. I want to get into this one. But it's like, okay, so if we think that there could have been a universe before us, right? Well, we know for a fact that they could still exist and ultimately understand our universe far better, influence it, and have that very real thought of, hey, you and your chaos theory mathematics, free will having bastard ass selves could in fact affect us much later on, and we don't want to do that, right? We don't want that going on, all that kind of stuff. And so there's an argument to be made that they don't really have to do as much as you might expect if they can really calculate that hard. And it's very, very unlikely that they, statistically speaking, aren't doing that. That's one of those fuck yous to statistical probability, right? It's like, no, the aliens, we don't. And it's like, no, actually, you don't know. Like, that's a normal, regular. We already kind of try and do that with our own, like, hey, we're gonna cut down some trees and get a lesser forest fire. And it's like, and you're not something possibly like that. Does that scare you? That they could do that? I mean, it shouldn't. Because, like, if you're good, you're good. You're bad, you're bad. And there's no way. But it's like, hey, they can't live there unless they themselves figured out a lot of getting rid of Trumps and MAGA and so on, And a lot of free shit because all the energy ever. Like, who gives a shit, basically, right? Like, it wouldn't really make much sense to be like that. So, of course, they're trying to remove that. Which is, like, going to be their version of God and shit, trying to literally remove them. You know what I mean? It's like they see all, know all inside of this tiny little universe of ours, and it's like, yeah, we're there. It's such a big, But it's like, yeah, well, there's that. And it's like, hey, but by the way, also, doing a little hand thing here. Second generation stars here were far cleaner, right? But they still produced heavier elements, right? And we still ultimately had lots of planets, right? And it's like we're third, or first generation. Sorry, we're first. The naming scheme is weird for them, honestly. Yeah, it's like first generation is us, and then second is like slightly further back, and then third generation is like the beginning. I don't see why they named them this way, but anyways, second generation happened to have a good amount of planets that had formed. And there's still heavier elements that are, having formed as a result of all these nova, and even the beginning of the, Big Bang probably produced a decent amount of heavier elements still, for what's worth, pretty quickly, right? But it's like that means that we get different life forms that are more likely to happen. We had to deal with a lot of radioactive and catalytic and very reactionary elements, you know what I mean, during our, growing up evolutionarily speaking. So they likely would have had less of that to deal with, which means you can get to a cool version of something that we've figured out how to do in our labs that acts a little bit like a slime mold, right? But it's like, here's a polymerized amino acid, which I'm not going to show it. It just know that they've done this, right? So like they've made polymerized amino acids that happen to be able to turn polystructural, and that's very similar to our lipid and nucleus structures of our own cells, right? And they act very similarly, and they change on mechanical, so like the shape way, and it seems to be a memory for them that then actually can observe and influence itself, and even interact with electromagnetic and electrostatic and light. So there's that, right? And it's like, whoa. So they're like morphy things, right? And it's like, yes, well, yeah. It's kind of hard to know. We haven't, done that kind of thing. But like, the general gist for me is like, well, it's much more likely that if certain things like that happen, that they have the ability, okay, to perceive light and in quantum sort of situation effects much better than others, right? Because it's basically what they're doing anyways, essentially, right? Like as they grow, they're almost like a collective consciousness of multiple different little tiny cells, you know? But eventually, like more specializations and so on start to happen. You get the general gist, right? But then, of course, when it's automatic, they would likely form a type of personality where they're better than others and they're quite Gabagoo-like. Cut to, hey, they're probably in your body and, they proliferated, and there's lots of time in between the second generation and our first generation here. And it was a lot easier for them to stay together and live for a very long period of time, traveling normal, regular speeds. And hey, wouldn't you know it, there's some life on that planet. I can kind of somewhat sense it. And yeet some people that they don't like off onto our planet, and they break their body down just a little bit into polymerized polystructural amino acids that can go through our pores and skin and influence our brains, and we've evolved with them. Some of us are immune and some of us aren't. I'm immune. I just like to talk about that sometimes. See ya. Here's something else I wanted to record, right? So our ability to calculate is based upon fundamental physics of something moving and then something changing, and then we measure that, we observe that. That's how transistors all work, basically. An electron moves and flow happens, and we amplify that given effect if we happen to have a type of, cache going on, or an already, connected circuit line, essentially. And that allows for you to get a transistor. You know what I mean? Pretty much as simple as it gets. Or maybe we have a field that lowers the resistivity, so on, that kind of stuff. That's what our brain is, right? That's what every nerve is in your body. That's what every single solitary cell of yours does for your mRNA that then changes to every DNA that you have. Every given exchange inside of your cells as well does this. Now, we don't observe it. Oh, wait. Actually, well, I mean, kind of, we do, though, and then we send signals in a big river system that's containing it in a fairly Faraday cage-like manner from a conductive circuit resistive insulator semiconductor skin-like material, which is interesting, right? Pretty simple. Is it, though? Because we've been trying to figure it out for a really long time. Not very simple. It's that scale stuff, right? But it's like clearly stuff influences us. But it's like, hey, wait a second. When we're calculating at these, real-time speeds, we're also moving these things, and it takes a while for us to go down the line with multiple of those that then go and so our storage happens to be based upon that field and potential energy and mechanical. So this is the physical structure or the very molecule in several different areas of your brain, right? And so, like, defined consciousness, it means it's the very thing that is your brain, and that how it interacts with that which is your reality. Now, granted, it's a very self-contained, kind of good sort of matrixy foam sponge thing that's electrically conductive fat, basically, and that's all it really is, except for all this light that's there that is also absolutely, we do know it affects that, and then if we happen to vibrate it the right way, that also changes it, along with electromagnetic signals and electrostatic signals all change that. And if you phase it the right way at a distance, that will also change your brain, even if it's not directly connected to it. To put this into perspective, okay, it's like, hey, remember those things like for the real-time stuff? It's like we can't possibly calculate with all of this air and ground that does that, and all the space in between planets, and all of the stuff that's in between an electromagnetic core that happens to do these things as well of a planet, right? Or like maybe a star, perhaps, or like maybe this Oort cloud business that happens to ground out certain things over time and distance. On a very large scale, it starts to look quite similar to how our brains work. Just saying, same thing for why it is that things move. There's a potential, I need this, electron, proton. There's too much space here. Maybe you can fill it up for me, kind of pressure stuff. So, like, real time is hard, but to calculate it, it's like, well, actually, it's pretty easy to do that. But, like, you have to be the calculator, right? Because you're already doing it. That's pretty standard stuff. But, hey, wait. Before you leave, okay, this one's the real fuck you, basically, to people that are out there like me that might not have gotten to that point. Here's something that sucks. Because of that phasing and because of the potential energies and because of how you can actually get something to pop in and convert itself into the necessary particle and energy necessary and needed at that point in time and move it, that means that you can calculate from one much smaller computer that projects everything to those points and moves it back towards where it came from, while calculating it at all junctures towards and from back to the source. And, well, as much as that faces you, right? It's like, well, don't worry. yeah, you can calculate for that, and you can observe it if you could get to something of an angle that's dimensionally such that allows for you, while it's moving, meaning if you want to calculate for spin here, while it moves, essentially, so like you're going to try and calculate the spin with this, move that sensor with it, and then rotate it to a 90, you can see the spin happening in a 3-dimensional 4D manner. Standard stuff. But that allows for you to get only some of that, because you need to get below to at least Planck scales of time and space. Right? You got to get rid of the occlusions. There are many of them, and that quantum foam is actually able to be cascade resonanced and amplified, which is what you're already trying to attempt to accomplish with some of your observations of it. But it's like you're already in a weird position on this side where I go, you're in a compressed space-time on a planet that's orbiting something that does that on a bigger scale, that then throws a resonance frequency of gravity waves around that clearly has multiple different ion states of potential that move together with that. And you've never once even gotten rid of those ions or those potential states or any of the given gravitational wave energy that can actually influence really small particles and wave functions to looking like they don't fall back, which, that's weird. It boggles the mind in a lot of ways that you're like, man, wait, this connective force, I didn't get rid of it. And yet, the gravity is not there. And it didn't just fly away. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, you sound like a person that knows what they're saying, and you don't want to say it. You know quantum gravity exists. You know it does. You know it's influencing it. It should just fly away. It might be super light. Sure. And yeah, no, and in this environment and context and situation and where you're measuring it, you know, it has angular momenta, which, like, it's spinning, and it has the relative spin of everything else around it that it came in with. That's quantum information, right? And, you know, it's kind of hard to, like, hey, you know, as it goes up, it's like, wait, why is it going up? Is it because it's going to continue its trajectory? So why didn't you arrest the trajectory? Huh? And it's like, unfortunately, they've never done that, which is a bullshit move. I kind of hate that part. And then they were like, it's getting colder. Relative to every one of you trying to observe it. Yes, no. But the chaos to something else is still there to something else that is relative to it. Still moving. Relative different to you observing it. Quantum relativity is still a thing with how you observe things. That doesn't change. Do you get me? So your little bullshitty observations for how the panpsychism and all this other shit doesn't work. You remove that part to try and suggest something, and it didn't work because it's like somebody trying to cheat an equation. Like, oh, I don't know, 0.9 repeated is the equivalent of 1, but they got rid of the repeated symbol over that x. It's still there. You can't remove it. Just so you can make your math easier for you. You didn't prove jack diddly fucking squat. You lied with math. And that does tend to get me. Okay? I don't like you. There's an infinite number of zeros, and you didn't get rid of that one. So, like, you didn't do anything but try and smarm your way through to a bunch of people that don't know better. And I don't like that. That's like fuck you levels. Yeah, that's like a genuine fuck you level there on that one. So, instead of getting into all that, it's like, hey, guess what? The calculations here are far more massive and far more numerous and definitely a lot more difficult for you to observe the way that you're trying to probably suggest by the end of this one that you can try and do. And hey, if I'm an alive being that happens to be polystructural polymerized amino acid that sees a repeating pattern of any sort in any observational directionality, to any light, an electromagnetic, and electrostatic effect that's even possibly phononic, meaning vibratory, they're going to pick up on that. So we don't see this thing that we don't want you to see, the alive thing says. Really? Huh. So you have to either freeze it really rapidly and not let it in on the fact that you're about to do that, or you probably aren't going to be able to see it, are you? And it's like quantum gravity doesn't work that way because we prefer our observations that definitely don't account for any of these things that you just talked about going on. And I'm like, okay, whatever, dude, but it doesn't really change the fact that it's like some of that is still very relevant and happens to be going on. But, you know, as correct as you are definitely on some of that, this is necessary for you to get somewhere on the rest of that, or you're fucked. You will be lying to a lot of people for a very long time, and then a whole massive problem to the foundations of your actual science and physics, which, hey, I actually do use and do appreciate and do say that exists and is correct in many aspects, will get challenged by a bunch of assholes. And I could have the next Nazi party come in and go, no, and we shouldn't believe in Einstein or any of the Jews. And that's all it'll take, because they can challenge your observations. That's how easy that is. You have got to do this, please. Please do this. Stop fucking around. You need this part, okay? And you are arguing, by the way, with a bunch of people that know they're wrong. They're trying to cheese it. They know they didn't do enough work. There's no way they don't know. They're smart enough to know. There's no fucking way they don't know that shit. Right? That problem. So when you know that, it's like, wait a second. Oh, that's my funding or my career or my legitimacy and validity as a physicist or PhD or scientist or even field of study. And that would fuck my ass up. So of course I'm going to defend it. And it's like, yeah, no, you were wrong. You defend it by saying you were wrong and you didn't account for things and you own up to it and you take responsibility. That's what you do. Or you're screwed. That's what happens. So you have to do that. Okay? And it's like, until you do that math, until you do those observations, until you get it done, or you account for a lot of that, you're fucking yourselves over long term, and you know that. My free will is not like this. That is not how our brain... the microtubules quantum resonantly emit light together. Really? And there's antenna-like in the crisscross, and that's phasing. And they can influence that, and you don't observe that unless... well, how do you? Do you see how that can also influence electrical charge signaling in your brain? Right? How different synaptic networks can grow along with be less resistive or more resistive and get changed over a much longer period of time. And that's just regular growth, and people wouldn't really be that way, and that's normal. Really. You haven't accounted for that, along with your DNA rate expressions and environmental stressors, which can help influence that. But like, hey, if I can get you to do a little bit more of that, a little bit more of that, a little more of that, and then eventually they can use that to more hack you and influence you from afar or inside of your ass, which is really another part of that too. What would you say? Because, yeah, you can get that done from afar. You can have that happen. You don't need a lot of energy. You don't need a fuck ton of accuracy either. At all. And what's in there can naturally have the accuracy. Which, what are you going to do about that one? It's like, look at R, an insanely weird geometric shape for this best antenna we've ever made for this given frequency of light. And it's like, and your brain's connected how many different ways? I remember reading an old-ass study back in the mid-2010s here that says 11 dimensions of connection that loop. Electricity's looping? And then there's layers here, so as it goes out, they can influence that and impact that in such a way where, that then beam forms its ass. At a very small, tiny little nano to even smaller scale. Are you great at measuring these forces that are itty-bitty but very profoundly strong and hitting very accurately where they need to be? No! You never thought to look for it, did you? And that removes a huge problem with certain symptomologies you might have thought I presented with. Not a lot of fucking doctors over there understand the quantum physics or any of that. And if they do, they go, well, that's very much a possibility, and it's very hard for us to measure that, which is why we'll say it's not a possibility. Because I'm not going to do that for all of you. Fuck you, and fuck off, and I might kill you if I freeze your brain. And it's like, no, you would kill us if you freeze your brain, even in a biopsy fucking manner. They're literally seeing your observations, bro. You are that to them. You know that, right? Let alone anything else that doesn't need to do that and use us can still do that with their versions. There are a lot of things going around that can absolutely 100% do that. Observe and calculate and be projected around and exist only in the very sense of force applied to us, but don't exist. It's basically hallucination to all of us. I call it a Lemke brain. Personally, it's like a Bosnian brain, right? It just pops into existence, right? But it's really just projected kind of shit that looks like it's there, and it gives you the idea, an illusion of force applied, but it's not. And you can tell, if you work hard enough, if it's there. Isn't that an interesting problem for some of you? Because you can figure out that angularity, you can figure out those phasings, and you can 100% do this at a much larger scale. Yeah, that's your face again. Suck it up and do the work. That's what I'm telling you to do. That's what I'm doing now. You gotta do that. If you don't, then you don't know. And this is in very, statistically speaking, much more likely than your given phenomenon going on. You have to rule this out. It's so much more likely. It's way more likely to form those types of life that can become sentient and self-aware, all of that. It's far more ubiquitous everywhere around us than us. Then on top of it, things for a universe before us are much more likely to have access to influencing that in you. So instead of, it's statistically, we don't see a way statistically that this could be, it's like, no, you didn't scale that right. You're wrong, actually. It's far more likely that this is going on than it's not. That's actually how math works. That's actually how science and physics works. You didn't do the work. Exactly. When you get to that point, you start realizing, oh, you look stupid. You should shut the hell up. You look like a person that thinks a certain way because the status quo that doesn't know as much as others do didn't put two and two together. 2 and 2 says, oh yeah, no, that's still 4. It's far more likely that that's going on than this bullshit. But it's like, I have no way of defending against that. And it's like, yeah, Doc, I know. I get you. But except for the fact that medications do absolutely still contribute to a reduction of this given signal and phrasing and all of that. And so it can help you still. That's right. If you want to go with like how it propagates through us and how it interacts and how it interferes, yeah, medications can still help you. All right. And it's like, hey, it sticks together better and it keeps this going. If it's a molecular structure, sure, another version, all the same. Same thing for activating the neurons the right way, right? Hey, same thing. That can help you. Okay, so like you do have ways. We might eventually be able to stop and prevent any polystructural polymerized amino acids of any sort, but there's other types, organic or non-organic or hybrid therein, that can also do that. Although it's more likely that those hybrids and synthetic would be much later on, right? And on a very highly specific manner of like, star and planet that would have to produce something like that. But like organic, on the other hand, is a lot more easy. And of course, changing that structure and changing like how they're connected gives them a similar change to how their brain thinks. Their personality changes roughly-ish, right? They could, like, put it this way, they could become a collective, as they could use multiple people, but also they could make it so that way they could store multiple, as like, let's say it was religion or something, and like that was your version of heaven. You're heading towards a light or something. And it's like, oh, well, that's interesting. But they eat your consciousness. They eat you a little bit, picograms maybe, right? Not much, but still something. And it's momenta that travels and propagates and gives them energy to continue. And then they can still get into other life forms as you decay, right? Which momenta is the thing. Like energy and electricity and electromagnetic and light all is still them stored in hot points, effectively. And if those points get altered, then ultimately disrupt that, just like with our brain. See what I mean? So it's like, no, they're fragile in a different way, but technically they're not, because they'll just be able to go back and, the rest of that kind of situation. Where they could have multiple personalities that they ate, and then they know I look like you, and I have this memory, and oh, yes, no, ha, ha, ha. But they're not. They are them. And if you disassociate hard enough, you effectively die a little bit, don't you? Personality and mind-wise inside. And you turn more gabagoo, don't you? If that's the way it heads. You know what I mean? So it's like, hey, there could be people that are 100% not the people you think at all. They could slowly but surely eat your psyche and your mind, not your brain, your psyche and your mind, and change it to where they are 100% the ones in control, and they are those people, and they're just able to lie through that pretty easily. You don't have a way of getting around the uncanny valley that doesn't exist anymore with all the memories that 100% they do have. That's right, they look, act, and talk all the same. That's right, they're just there, and I swear they're the same. I swear you have to prove, provide, I will never be able to do this work. You, with your apartment, that's all you have, will be able to somehow do the, okay. And you're the one that looks weird now, huh? Guess what, Doc? You got fucked, huh? It's just this disorder. There's no way an antenna could be formed with your brain and it can affect and influence and have voice from others, or even the aliens, which that's another one, to even actual humans that could eventually one day use this as a wireless transmission technique. You know what I mean? We can connect to computers. Eventually we could get there. It's like, hey, suck it up, Doc. You got wrecked. Your idea of this possibly happening is more of I don't have a way of doing anything to bait you on that. So instead, hey, but you don't want this, and maybe we can help you by doing this, and we see this part of our brain activating in other parts with it, you know, and sometimes it doesn't fully work out to that pattern being the same, and the dopamine not actually doing that, and or the serotonin as well. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe like this is one of them. Saying might be a pretty consistent one that they're able to use pretty often, but depending on the DNA and how your brain forms, they might just do that to you. Still, nevertheless. So it could work for some, and maybe it doesn't for a lot of others for a good reason. That's a thing. Now, might not all be that. Brain still fucks up. Like, that's a thing. We're all bioorganic computers. Your computer glitches all the fucking time, bro. Your brain, I know for a fact, does too, like mine. Everyone does. So, it's more about which version happened to do it. You know what I mean? Like, did I fuck it up or was it them? And this, and like, fuck. And all of that. And it's like, no, medication can sometimes help. And then you can talk to a person like me that goes, you know, I did a lot of medication. They threw a whole fucking pharmacy at me. I might be treatment resistant for a reason. Like, you explain this to a doctor and them not go, this is a rare mental disorder where he thinks aliens live inside of us. And then he explained all of it, and I didn't understand any of it. But no, it can't be done, and we would have already been seeing these studies and everything else like this happen. And it's like, no fringe theories here, unfortunately. These are technically the hurdles aren't there anymore because the technical hurdles were accomplished. We already got that figured out. It's the puzzle pieces that work out together. Like the statistical modeling for second generation doing this is far more likely. Yeah. So you're fucked on that one. And then we already have made our own version of those particular polystructural polymerized. So you're fucked on that one. Them traveling, yeah, that one's another one. They could have just fucking brute forced it with time, unfortunately. And went, well, there seems to be something that happens to maybe exist as, you know, good life forms or something, you know, whatever it could have been, honestly. Weirds, whims, and all that of that. But it's like, hey, no, they still had those that went on to wherever the hell they're going to go and do whatever the hell they're going to do. So it's like, no, they just yeeted them off because maybe they didn't like them or that was their mission or whatever the fuck else. See what I'm saying? And it's like, well, you evolved with them, so you never thought in any way to check to see if that was actually not a part of us from the start. Oh, no. Yeah. Well, wow. Yes, and then they can exist in many different life forms because we actually need amino acids all the time. And if we were to disrupt that, we would probably die. So you can't do that. See what I'm saying? It makes it exceedingly much more easy to infect people. Now, wouldn't you want that if you were an infectious life form? Yes, you would, obviously. Clearly you would. So it's like, oh, everything you're going to say is already not going to work. You were defeated the start of it. Because debate, whatever, is win-lose, and this was just a discussion and just some observations I had. And it apparently meant I became crazy instead of having post-traumatic stress disorder moments that led to some bad things happening. You know, I'm still there. We all have moments, man. That's what it is. But it's like, is it really that bad to think that way when there's logic and reason and a fuck ton of evidence for it? No. No, there isn't. And in fact, you don't need, that's victim blame, by the way. Like, it's like, you're too ugly and fat to have been raped. You don't have enough views. You don't have enough people subscribe to you to be hacked. You're not important or special enough. I know nothing about you, and this initial surface level observation suggests that I am right and you're wrong. Yeah. Well, okay, so let's get into that. All right, so here's how to hide packets, internet packets, in between others as stored data that gets used to build up data towards where it's going to go, as it's just information as to where it's supposed to have gone and what it means binarily. So like a packet can have this information, it's supposed to go to this server or whatever the hell else, right? And it's supposed to mean relative to this other thing that you're requesting, this, right? Well, that information can build up in a sequence and pattern to equal its own type of binary. That's right. Which means you got fucked again. Your argument's wrong. You don't have all the analysis on that one. They can absolutely use all of regular internet traffic, as absolutely anyone can, to observe anyone and everything that they do. And, you know, it's like, oh, well, this goes to this main server for your ISP or whatever. Yeah, and you're hashed, right? And it's encrypted. No, they still know where you live. It can only be coming from you. That's what that is. And everybody kind of knows that. And then everything that you do on a given website can 100% be doing that. Actually, when you try and do this argument where it's not happening, it doesn't work. Anybody that will tell you that you need something to cover that given camera for a reason, don't you? They can never stop them from using it if they want to. The best safety practice is there for a reason. But you're not special. Back to that one again. Wait, and I just listened to this incredibly good argument that blew my mind. You did. Yeah. Standard leading you techniques. You got to do it because a lot of you on every YouTube channel does it. No difference there. That's what that is. And yet, nevertheless, how many of you know damn well that not only is that possible and happening, that you don't even need to be special to have it happen, and somebody can just fuck with you for any reason they want. Scripts exist in dark web places that are literally just, you pay a couple bucks or some shit and you can just get access to most people's shit. Most people know that now. The older, terrible, never do any of the work doctors and more probably don't. But you're probably a person that's online and maybe the influencer, maybe you're bigger than me. You probably do know that this is happening, and it does happen all the time. And it's a lot easier to say it doesn't, and it's just easier to explain it like this, Occam Razor, except there's a lot of incentive to influence people. And you don't need to be big at all. And if you keep talking out loud, eventually people start listening. They keep coming back, don't they? Well, what happens when your argument falls flat on its face because of that? And the special that you don't see is a generic, jealous, I don't think you're that smart as you say you are. Jealousy special. Can't be there. Versus, what I just gave you is a genius level argument against your idea of free will can't be possible. And it influences your relatively decently determined reality when you choose to do something that then chaos theory mathematics wise happens to influence things much more over time. And so can your even thoughts. Or at least their version they're in for the aliens and so on. But hey, wait a second, you can't connect to a type of conscious awareness that's passing right through you. Or you can't use that and influence it. Oh, turns out you could, and you probably are, and you don't know how much. And if you were to do the experiments and somehow figure out a pattern, you might be able to do something, huh? Oh wait, aren't you doing that already for radio waves and all these wireless signals? So null and void argument, null and void argument, null and void argument, null and void argument. All the technicals are already done. It's just you don't have the skill and I do. And others might too. So the symptomology becomes, I never did the work. I'm a bit of a weird know-it-all authority figure that wants you to immediately believe what I'm saying. But it's like, he doesn't sound insane, and he has good arguments. He's not like any of my other patients. And they might not have the knowledge he does. And so they could be doing that. But we just think that they aren't. And they never did the work. I'd have to test every one of them, and I'd have to figure out how that could happen. Wow, I have none of that money, and I don't want it, and then it's just give them the money to send, and that'll fix it. Except it often doesn't really do much but reduce some symptoms for some people, and make some far, far worse off, and die sooner. All cause mortality. Isn't that interesting? Some of these are literally destroying people's kidneys, and others are choline storms waiting to happen. Others are, that dopamine is actually not doing that, and you never checked to see if it did. And this serotonin norepinephrine connection is not active in this given region of your brain that seems to be overactive in no way. But we saw that on these people it was. It sounds an awful lot like a lot of people are trying to figure something out, and that's normal. And we see similar things, except the similar gets removed when you look a little harder and you listen a little longer, don't you? And a person becomes more intelligent and learns enough to be able to explain something to you so you don't see them that way. How many of you discount them? It's like, no, I'm really intelligent and creative. That's a fact. That's I've always been that way. Yeah, I was born that way. I just got better. Right? But it's like, when you don't have an argument against my arguments, you kind of fall into a category of, I can't go along with you. I'm trying my best really to take these medications to see ultimately if I can get any help from them. I'm not trying to resist them. I wanted the help. No ability for that to be the case. Sorry, dumbass. That argument falls flat too, and you know about the placebo, and that can influence you, and I want them to work. Yeah, that's the point. I'm not trying to fight anything. I'm fully well aware of how much my own brain can also influence my brain to have hallucinations or any of that, but I also have chronic migraines which give me hallucinations. You know that, right? Like, that's a thing, right? So it's like, there's that, but I didn't know that. I didn't do that work. I didn't go through all that. Can you explain that again? It's already almost ridiculously, oh, right, yeah, no, I should probably not. This is a really long video. Right. Go do the work. Go through any and all of that. Why don't you? You know what I mean? But the point is, it's like, yeah, no, I have that. And it's like, that was never taken into account, along with my psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. That increases the likelihood of these symptoms seeming like this. Yes, it does. And we know that now, especially more recently. Thanks, Doc. Fucking great shit, mate. Fucking retard. Hindered, held back ass belief system bullshit. Now we're like, the immune system can absolutely cause it. Oh, really? No kidding, huh? So it's like, wait a second. Huh. Stress, you got PTSD, you're working on your chronic migraines, and you're taking shit for your psoriasis, and you don't seem to have really the same amount of issues, and you're even taking your stimulants for your ADHD with your massively severe major depressive disorder. Less dopamine and massive depression, and there's anxiety. It builds up and escalates. I'm seeing a pattern here of, I didn't do any work, and I diagnosed you like this. And I didn't even understand the first thing about what this fucking genius level bullshit that you just said was. Because IQ. I'm like, Meanwhile, I say I'm smart. Yeah, I probably could be a genius to some. I don't really care. I'm a normal person that makes mistakes and is stupid often as just as much as the rest of anyone else. But the point is, that's minimizing to a person that needs that, right? They need that part for them. You're not a genius. That's a first telltale sign. That's a symptom. He's grandiose thinking. And it's like, oh, right. So I already know how to play this so that way you don't have that initial ego psyche problem of thinking that I have the grandiose thinking. I have to placate your ego and say, I'm stupid. But it's like, I actually am. I'm not just trying to do that. It's like, no, I am stupid at times, like anyone else. Like, that's the same. But see, the problem with diagnostician criteria isn't very good. Because I know you, and you're just lying! And I want it to be this way! It's like, is that the aliens talking? Can you prove it isn't? Or is that your ego getting bruised? Because, like, the aliens want to make you have an ego that gets bruised in such a way that then they can have you psychologically kind of have problems and eventually take you over. But it's like, you can't prove that it's not happening. And in fact, it's more statistically likely that it is. Not that it's not. That's the problem. That's the fuck you to that. Right? Like, it's like, oh, shit. Fuck. Okay. All right. So how would I defeat that? It's like, oh, no. Remember, keep yourself sound mentally, right? Like, the more you basically are solid in yourself and so on, like your personality and like what you're looking for and what you're wanting to do and keep yourself healthy and all that. So exercise, eat, sleep right, all that shit. You know what I mean? It's like, that's just good exercise. That's just good sleep. That's just good. But what? It's like, that's how easy they are to beat, motherfucker. They're fragile as shit. They have to get you riled the hell up in your brain to get you to fucking falter, and then they can take over. They fucking weak boys, man. They need you to live and do something. Right? Like, if you think about it, and then they just fucking take over somebody. The origin of skinwalkers around, right? Like, ooh. But it's like, they weren't really, yeah. But they would be mostly in one person in those beginning, and then they spread out, and then they can do collectives and all that. So the point is that, hey, psychologically, if you keep yourself sound, they're less able to do things to fuck with you and pile on and give you more ruminating thoughts and worse feelings and all the rest of that. So it's like, hey, do your therapy, take your meds. Standard shit. Exercise, eat right, sleep well. Standard shit. Hey, I'm saying the same thing. But it's like, you know what? It seems to work because logistically, that's the easiest way for them to do anything to you and take anything over. As obviously that would be a bit, I'm going to go to the hospital and then have the meds. Or I get shot and killed because I did the wrong thing. I show off that I'm weird and people don't like me now. You get it? But if I subtly, slowly influence your society, your zeitgeist, your culture, your laws, your government, and more, then I can get you all on the page of manipulation is okay and psychopathy you need it a little bit and all these other terrible things. And you should be afraid of eugenics just preventing those things from happening. Then we can then use that to have ourselves slowly learn how to better live longer and healthier lives and really crack down and enforce that being only that and not allowing for ourselves to discriminate against anyone that doesn't do that. And it's like, no, we will not crack down on discrimination. Why? We should do that already. What is this? The DEI was removed. Oh. Interesting. Confirmation bias. So this has happened over many millennia, over and over again, and it seems to recede back as it seems to cause a lot of problems with the people in the country and empire and so on. Ruins them, and they have to rebuild, and they go back to this that I talk about. And what if they did it for a longer period of time? What if they made sure to scare the ever-loving shit out of you from preventing this? Yeah, preventing it hard as they can, right? Like, I don't want eugenics. That would be bad. No. You have to start off slow. You can't get anywhere with that without, ultimately speaking, figuring out what does and does not occur. Which, it's like, you can brute force a lot of that for its worth for statistical pattern recognitions. It's what it is. But no, because people will abuse it. Yeah, so let's get you afraid of that. Because they'll abuse you right now, and they're already doing it. So, argument's great, huh? It's like, they'll use it to say that, no, but, like, gay people are fine. Like, they help raise the children, they not hurt anyone, they provide for the society. But what the hell is the problem here? Same thing with any of the rest of them. That's built in. Like, hey, if you need to fuck to live, get it done faster, fuck you. Suck it up. You gotta fuck your way out of a death to your species. You're gonna fuck sooner and you're gonna have kids sooner, aren't you? So there's an argument, no matter what, for every one of them. There's no argument for you arguing against them, though. It should be obviously logically seen and emotionally seen, and it really doesn't make any sense that you'd hate them, not doing anything wrong. It's really the manipulation that you don't like. You just automatically assume for anything is like that. The gay people are not because God. No, you're the one manipulating things. So that doesn't work. Your logic doesn't happen to work. Your emotion don't happen to work. And you're the one trying to mirror abuse. Basically that one. Manipulate, right? Yeah, like, no, that's you. And like this, and explain how it's not. And now I'm on the up and above you, and you have to beat my challenge. And there's more of us that think like this, and so that way, false belief system, we're all better and right, and you're not. Our mob is all right about thinking that the rays of the sunlight will make it so we can just live, and we're plants now. What? No, and that's what's going to make it so we can propagate and have, of course, all the plant stuff, brain thing happen for heaven. That's what this is. No, a different consciousness. You would be living in their consciousness. It's not a computer like that. That's not how that would work. They are going to eat your consciousness and just use that to manipulate you. To believe in heaven. Are you one of them? You do know that, right? Like, that's a pretty obvious foregone logical conclusion for them to do to you. And it's like, wait, no, I know what you're doing. You're trying to prime us into believing your side. Because that's so easy. It's easier to tell the truth than to believe it. Too many scientists out there got nowhere for a very long period of time, sometimes hundreds of years. Newton being one of those examples, and others before and after. It's realizing things and putting it together, and others going, it's insane, it can't possibly. And Einstein was right and Planck was wrong, wouldn't you know it? Turns out there are rings called Einstein rings now because he was right and Planck was wrong. Turns out, it only took like one person that could actually have a viable argument against it. And he probably would have changed his mind. And I have a viable argument because Occam razors that are not Occam razors, they're actually more complicated to be our way versus this way. Because if you don't know, it's like, wait, it can still be happening, but this also can be happening, and you haven't gotten rid of that. And in fact, they can influence it to be worse. It's a thing, especially if they happen to be able to understand your DNA a little bit better than you. Because they're going to be there from the start, aren't they? Fuck you indeed. Ah, yes, fuck me indeed. Ah, that's what you're probably, you know, it's fuck you, really? Like, come on, man. Most of you just be excited about this that know a thing or two about any of that. This is loser people that are stick people as fuck because they want to debate something. I'm going to antagonize a doctor that thinks they know more, right? But, like, in reality, this would be to the other doctors there looking at this guy like, shut the fuck up. You do not represent us. You are terrible trash. Fuck off, doctor. I'm a doctor. I believe you. I know what you're saying. Fuck that guy. We're not like that. No. And it's like, you gotta remember that side. Like, I do know that. That's the rage bait stuff that I have to get to try and get views or whatever. Right? Like, it's standard shit to hit them because they're so easy and insecure. I can escalate it and get somewhere often. And that's what my comment section often is. Like, if I get the baity title, I can get them in. Like, oh, my crazy, stupid binary math. And if you look through that, or it's like, hey, I solved Simon, which is not Simon, but it's zeta function, and Riemann zeta function. And it's like, look at this motherfucker say exactly what I said in this video, verbatim back to me. Straight get dunked on. Not even challenge at all. In fact, he actually said it would work, but that's against the premise of what this is. So it works. The Millennium problem is worked. So it works. It's solvable like that. Yeah, but not the way I would like it to be, or how we approve of it with your thing, and your proof wouldn't be accepted. So it works is what I'm hearing. Let alone, like, there were several different ways of doing it in there. And it's like, that's just there. Just waiting for anybody that actually might want to take a shot at it and look at it. It's like watching a bunch of assholes that assumed that they knew better than me and I didn't need to look at it and you were wrong anyways and you're just overconfident garbage. Get eaten alive by their own ego. With automatic assumptions and shit. You know what I mean? It's just like watching people get massacred. It's like, oh, okay, okay, whatever. Like, I know what I got there. I don't have to be just confident. I can just be smart enough to know I'm right. That one sucks. But it's like, no, wait, no, because you didn't write the math, and that math matters. I couldn't write it or do any of those things. Yeah. You couldn't. It's like, hey, if you just follow the fucking instructions, you would be able to solve it. But it's like, I don't want to do it. I don't care about it. This is an easy way to solve it. Why don't you go do it? You want to do it. Just credit me. I don't care. Like, literally, I don't give a fuck about it. Like, why would I do it? I don't think you get, like, how stupid it is to assume that I'd want to do the same things you do. And I don't have my own issues just getting basic shit done and following through on that. And it's like, I don't want to do that, and it has no fucking, like, stimulation or anything for that with me. It's just something I saw, and I was like, all right, here. This looks like it's easily explainable and solvable this way. Why don't you just do that? And then it worked, apparently. I can just do that, though. That's the problem with me. Right? It's like, you explain, you're the Indian guy again. You need to be there. And I say, shut up. I'm not you. Go do the thing. Whatever. Fuck off. And, oh, I'm not you. I don't want to do the math either. And it's like, I wonder why it hasn't been solved. Huh. Oh, wait, no, it was. So there's that. That's when you need it, or if you need it. Whatever. Do the math. Publish like this. Become one of us. Care. Make us important and prioritize us. Make our stuff in situation or status quo. Make money somehow to get published in something that we pay them to publish. What are you fucking on about, you retard? Shut up! You already know it's an impossible task. You already know it's not a thing I could do. You already know all the arguments against your own thing. Shut the fuck up, bro. Shut up. Learn to be quiet and just move on. That's the same thing with those doctors. It's like, I'm not like them. Yeah, but then I hit you. It's like, there's money. Money doesn't incentivize me. I never give a shit about that. I never will. I need money for certain things, but hey, I'll work towards it or whatever, but I don't want to do it that way because, like, I don't care about that, and I can't get myself to do it, and fuck off, and someone else will probably figure it out, and whatever. It's not consequential. You know what I mean? Towards any of my designs or anything that I'm using. So I don't really care about it. It's what it is. But if it's not the same for you, it's like, oh, well, there you go. That might lead you towards the solution. Even if it is probably the solution. Whatever, you know. But, like, hey, wait a second. The doctor's here, and then the quantum physics, and then... but that would make... And then, so quantum to then classical, and it's not decoherent the same... And it would be using the decoherence as an energy collection towards a given directionality, pattern, sequence, phasing. And it's like, oh, so I already know where you're going to go with that. I've already done that work. That's how easy that is. It's not brand new. I've already even talked about it on my YouTube channel. That's why free will is not quite the same way. And yes, free will can be influenced, and it can basically, even a hyper-deterministic reality can be influenced by a chaos theory mathematics introduction of somebody that can observe a little bit and make a different choice. Even if it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, but it's like, hey, look, logically, this would follow this. And it's like, yeah, no, every human's always been logical, and we've never done dumb shit and gone against our own best wishes. You make sense. You do, person saying that. There's no fucking way. Like, clearly, you can't determine all of these things. Most of you, most likely, we don't know about that side of things. Don't even know if you're actually accurate. Oh, but wait, if you go back all the way with me to Chandler, Arizona, I've been accurate every fucking day, every second of every day for over a decade. Sucks to be you, but that means you can absolutely get that information from all these electronic devices that are constantly watching us, or even know how wave functions propagate through space and time, and then work out how that then gives us information. Can't influence it unless you put information and energy, but like, you can observe it as a p-value absolute that happened. As the consequence of everything moving forward means it can only be basically doing that from these other things having happened, even if it's a classical to and even quantum side of things. That's right. You get determined by a p-value past history. That's why you're hyper-deterministic. Except then you can also observe a good amount, and that gives you your free will, and you're not fully hyper-deterministic. Although that's a locality thing, you know. Right? Like, hey, on our Earth, a lot less determined than, like, hey, this free charge particle that's just traveling in one direction and there's not much that's going to influence it at all. And it becomes incredibly determined. So there's that. It's like, no, there's all these other directions. Like, yeah, okay, so we don't want to do the physicist's cubical spherical cat. Okay, well, all right. But wait. You can then know all of those things, can't you? Like, it being in existence necessitates all given information and reason for all their things being and doing what they do. The very act of saying that we can't observe something is not actually going to give you an uncertainty at all. In fact, it gives you a definite placeholder value that says, hey, guess what? I am piss poor at not influencing this observation of this thing. But I can say I could have influenced it this many number of manners and ways, and denoise the shit out of that. And account for some of these other more larger variables of quantum, gravity, electromagnetic waves that are traveling much longer wavelengths. And same thing for electrostatic as a force carrier in its own right, along with neutrons that just pass right on through and for sure disrupt most of your fucking observations. And you do it in a static box that doesn't move as things happen. That's a pretty one-dimensional, 2D at most flatland look to it, isn't it? But there's more dimensions. There's a third. And you can move. That's the fourth. And you can observe it while you're doing that. But you're not doing that. But your brain is inherently better at it because you do that all the time, huh? You hear, you walk, you talk, you see, you balance. You look stupid to your brain, I'm sure. You know what I mean? But it's like, no, I can't do all of those things. Well, no, you can, and you could. You will eventually. But it's like right now, all your best shit is essentially, I already know I'm wrong. I already know about the issues of my observations. Don't even get out of here. I know someone finally figured. God damn it! So yes, we know. Fine. Oh yeah, but if you don't do that, then it's fucking borked and it won't work. And what you're saying is going on that matches and explains your observations over there doesn't work that way at all. And a lot of people are arguing for you, and they don't know you're fucking wrong. And they're wrong. I know. Oh, do you? Well, they're still arguing. Yeah, tell them off eventually? Yeah, good. Because I need it. These fucking dumbasses don't know shit yet. It's like watching a person that actually makes a movie, right? And it's like, I know every single flaw of all of my shots, every fucking line delivered, all these, like, and it's just like a person goes through it and they look at it and it's like not even a thing, you know what I mean? But it's like, then you're the one that, and it's just like, everything is bad about it, I didn't do this, anything, you know. But it's like, no, it is still pretty okay, depending, like, the more you put into it, the better it gets, and you gotta get to good at least. Good means you can account for a fuck ton of previous and current and preceding variables, and you denoise and you really remove a lot of possibilities, and you watch for long enough, right, to then get what it is that could be there going on, which is kind of similar to your, order of magnitude, right? But it's like, it's a little bit more complicated than an order of magnitude. Imagine if you could hit it dead straight fucking on every time, and you basically removed a lot of these other variables and you accounted for how you're influencing it, and it goes on from there until you eventually got to the point where, yep, that's your experiment now. But it's like, yeah, no, you have to do that, which you're not doing that. It's like, no, I Faraday caged it with Earth. And you mean the big electrostatic effect thing that definitely gets worse because you're in a bunch of superconducting material things? Now, to you don't see your measurement device and sensor and detector being less than a Planck length askew from a giving wave and field going through it. But, well, obviously, that's kind of hard to do, right? So, like, you got to try and account for some of that, right? Which is rough as fuck. Because it's like, it could be that little, and it's like it can build up and effectively fuck you over and your entire observation. So, fuck. Yeah. But like, for us normal, regular, classical people, no. Whatever. Yeet. come back here. I was like, no, I do genuinely